Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Today we're talking all about planning your financial future. What we're going to explore today is how your values impact your relationship with money, how to plan for your 100-year life, and tips for managing your money as a couple. Please note that everything we're talking about today is general advice only, and you should always seek personalized advice about your finances from a professional. Now let's get into it.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast, everyone. Today we're hanging out with Adele Martin, the Money Mentor. She's an award-winning financial advisor and founder of the Saving Squad podcast. She helps people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s maximize their money so that they can do more of what they love. Welcome to the podcast, Adele.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys.
So to start off with, do you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am nearly getting towards that next round number, a birthday 40. I've been in the financial planning industry for nearly 20 years and I absolutely love it because I get to help people, achieve their goals and get to be there when they do it. So, I feel very blessed for the role that I get to play. And I do that largely with people, in their 20s, 30s and 40s. I used to deal with retirees when I first started in the industry, and I would hear all the regret that they would have, the regret that they now couldn't do the things that they loved because of their health or they didn't have the finances to be able to do it. And so, I want to help my generation live the life they love now rather than having to wait for retirement.
So that kind of covers how you got passionate about working with millennials.
Yeah. That is exactly it.
That label of millennial is kind of funny because I think it's still perceived as if they're really young people, and yet the oldest millennials are about to turn 40.
Yeah, that's right. We feel like now, ooh, shouldn't I have my stuff together now?
Yeah, it does feel like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know we definitely don't feel like that. Early 30s, and I'm like, oh, I thought we'd be a bit more organized. But we are making progress.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, Nathan and I read a book called The 100-Year Life. And it really got us thinking about how our generation and the generations that come after us are really confidently going to make it to 100 and probably even longer with modern medicine. There's some things that come up with that idea, like we're probably going to live quite a lot longer than the generations before us. And how do we generate enough income or create financial stability to sustain us for that 100-year life? Adele, can you talk to us a little bit about how we should start planning for something like living for 100 years?
Yeah, I guess the most important thing is the earlier you start, the better, because you actually need to save less when you start earlier, because what happens is your money basically, when you invest it, it goes out and works for you. It becomes like a little employee and it goes out and makes money, and then that money can be reinvested and then makes money. And so the earlier you start that, the better. So I think that's the most important thing. Now, we're very lucky in Australia because we have compulsory superannuation, and where 9.5% of your wage gets put into a retirement fund for you. The government has acknowledged, though, that they don't think that's enough. They wanted to increase it to 12%, but there was some backlash about who's going to pay for that. So, I think they understand that for most people there is going to be a gap. And so I really think we should take that responsibility to educate ourselves about it's those small things that you do regularly. It's not like a whole big thing that you do all of a sudden to have money. It's a bit like trying to lose weight. You don't just all of a sudden one day lose 10 kilos. It's those small things that you do consistently that would give you that long-term weight loss. It's exactly the same thing with savings. People think there's some, if I just buy this investment property, right, just do this one thing, some big grand gesture. Well, no, actually the key to building wealth, and having done this for nearly 20 years, is I know it's those small things that people do consistently that makes that big difference long-term.
Yeah, so it's really about growing wealth slowly, I guess, rather than that thought
it
of
is getting rich slowly, not exactly. Unfortunately, get rich slow,
not so sexy.
Yeah, not super sexy, but it's realistic and it's sustainable and it gets people those results. So I think what's hard for people with savings is you don't get that gratification instantly. It's something that for future you. And so sometimes it can be so hard to picture yourselves when you're older, and because it just seems so far off. So one of the exercises we get clients to do is actually to think about what actually makes a great life for them. What are they wanting to strive towards? What makes a great life? Because you know what, it might not be a whole ton of money. And so one of the things, maybe it's working part-time and getting to spend more time with their family. And so it doesn't necessarily, it's like success and what makes people happy. It's different for everyone. And so it might not be accumulating a whole heap of money. It could be actually doing a job that you can do into your 80s or do into your 70s that you really love doing, to be able to have flexibility with that job. Maybe you want to travel every 3 months or something. So maybe it's not about not working, not having to have enough money so you can retire at 60 and then last to 100. Maybe it's doing something that you love doing, or working part-time, or having some flexibility. So I think it's really important to figure out, what is important to you, what's going to make you happy, and then figure out, what role money actually plays in that.
Absolutely. So you touched on a couple of things there, that the sooner we get started planning our money, the better. But then obviously what is priority or what we value can be different for different people. How can couples who are in an early stage relationship have some of those conversations about financial goals and aspirations?
Yeah, it is really hard because money, particularly in Australia, is so taboo. People do not want to talk about money. They did a survey, and actually people would rather share publicly their favourite sex position than talk about how much they earn. So it is something that's so taboo. So it is hard, especially in that early stage of relationship, to bring it up. But it happens, money conversations happen straight away. But whether you have the conversation or not, it's happening because the restaurant that they pick, or the present that they buy, that's always around money. And let's just say you've got some credit card debt, you're trying to pay it off, but your partner wants to go to this fancy restaurant, and it's going to cost you a couple $100, and you can't afford it. Putting that conversation off really just you're starting the relationship on a really not great foundation. And so I think it's really important just to have those honest conversations as early as possible. So because chances are they might be feeling the same as well. They might be feeling a lot of pressure to take you somewhere that's expensive. So I think the earlier you can take that have that conversation, I think the better, and the better foundation you're going to have for the rest of your relationship together. So I think it's really important to earlier the better with those sort of money conversations, and just come from a place of good intent, but it is important to have the same values. The relationships that are going to, often last the distance are the ones that have the same values, and values turn up in money. So, if someone values security, they're going to want to have a house. They're going to want to have savings. If your partner doesn't value that, they're probably happy to be a nomad, to travel the world, to not worry about, having money in the bank. And so I think early on, understanding their values and what's important to each other is going to, not just infiltrate, your money, but the rest of your relationship as well. So yeah, having those similar values, I think is important, and finding that out earlier, the better. But there's definitely times when you don't have the same goals, and it's okay to be in a relationship and not have the same goals. You're not the same person. And so I do think it's really important to have your own sense of independence. And I've been with my partner, Nathan, for nearly 20 years. We still have our own play money. I don't want to be accountable to each other for, what did you spend and how much is that? And so we have our own fund money that we have separate accounts, and money goes into that each week, and we can spend on that whatever we like. And so if I want to blow $300 on a dress or your makeup or whatever, I don't have to feel guilty, or I don't have to feel like I have to hide it, because that is something that I see when I work with clients, is that they have hidden something from their partner. So they lie about how much something costs, and where those little lies start to creep in there, it creeps into other areas of your life. How you do something is how you do everything. And so I think it's really important to, if you do have, be in a relationship, you can still have your own independence. And I actually encourage people to have their own independence. So you're not feeling like, you have to hide stuff or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. So we have a very similar setup to that as well, where we've got our own play money. And I feel like it does work really well, because you can go out and buy a present for your partner and not feel like you're, taking money away from you as a team, or hiding it from your partner. And so, yeah, it works really well for us.
Yeah, that separate splash cash definitely works well for us. And it allows us to spend money on values that we hold outside of the values that we share. So for me, I tend to spend my splash cash on my friends. I tend to buy a lot of gifts and presents, whereas Nath tends to spend his splash cash on toys and hobbies and things like that.
Yeah. Well, your 5 love languages, yours must be gift giving, is it?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. It's number 1.
So Yeah. So when I work with people, I love to do that because I can understand, for everyone listening, the 5 love languages is how you show and like to receive love. And so often when I work with people and I see that, there's been a lot of money going towards gifts, it's usually because that their love languages is, giving gifts. And so, I think and that is important to understand yourself, because then you can understand each other. Well, you like to do, spend money. So we have to allow for that, because otherwise you're going to feel miserable. And, if we don't allow you to spend money on your what makes you happy, you're going to be miserable. And so rather than the other person questioning, well, that's a waste of money, why would you spend money on gifts, I think it's understanding your whole plan and understanding how much you can allocate to those ones, because that's actually something that I get from people is, but it costs me more. It's just typically, not always, but typically females would spend more on, say, looking good, and so they would feel guilty that they're taking more of the expenses on me, staying blonde. It's expensive to stay
hair,
blonde.
nails, eyebrows.
Exactly. And so, but having that honest conversation rather than hiding it, I think is, a really important. If you're going to, have those long-term, but to get a long-term, you want to make sure you're not, starting that foundation lying, or that, it's going to come up and you're going to spend it anyway. So you might as well be honest about it. And so otherwise it goes on a credit card and you hide it from your partner, and that just becomes, not a nice position to be able to be in, because then you go for a home loan, it's going to show up. And so, it can create a whole lot of fear and anxiety, affects people's mental health, having that sort of stuff hidden. And so, I really encourage people just to have that honest conversation to say, yes, it costs me more to be blonde. That's just, a reality of it. And so I think if you can have that conversation early, the better your relationship is.
So when do couples do that? Like, should they be doing it, before they move in together, as they move in together, or is it kind of like an anytime thing?
Yeah, I've seen people do different variations of it, and I think there's probably no one size fits all. I think you have to figure out, what you think's fair. So I saw one that had their bills account jointly, and so they each contributed to that. But everything else was income went to their own accounts. So income went to their own accounts, and then they put money into the bills account. So, but then how much money do you put in the bills account? Is it 50-50? I had one lady, and she earned, quite a significant more than her new partner. And so she was on, say, maybe 200,000 or something like that. And he was on maybe 50,000 or 60,000. And so what they did was they did it on percentages. So if they went towards a holiday or something like that, she would contribute, say, 75% of it, and he would contribute 25%. And so they thought that percentage base for goals was fair. And so, I guess there's, typically when people are fully merged, what I would suggest is they have one bank account. I call that the hub account, that all their income goes into. That hub account is also for their bills and the stuff that they can't control and they don't really blow money on. So the stuff that they don't have much control over, things like your rent, things like your, petrol, food, sometimes food, but mostly food, all comes from that account. And then that account pays you into your other accounts, so into your individual fund accounts, and into your, you might have an entertainment account. That's for stuff that you do together as a couple, and a certain amount of money each week goes into that. You might have a looking good bank account. We might have one for, presents or for holidays. So depending on the couple. So each week money automatically feeds into that one. That's that fully merged system. And so, but still individual, still got your own play money. I have seen people keep everything totally separate. I find that gets messy, because then what ends up happening is this one's paid for this one and this one pays for this one, and they're really merging their finances even though they haven't told each other they are. And so it just becomes messy.
Yeah, really transactional, that you owe me this and I owe you that.
Yeah, and then they've just got 20,000 bank accounts trying to do stuff and money going back and forth. And when you look at it, they are really sharing money. Whether they like it or not, they are sharing money. And so I think the other thing is people sometimes don't do it because they think, well, if we break up, it'll be easier. But depending on the state that you're in, once you're in a relationship for more than 6 months living together, you start to fall under the de facto rules anyway. And so obviously you have to get legal advice around that. But that's one of the things that I would just be thinking about anyway. Sometimes people think, well, we won't share bank accounts because that way we separate easier. Well, there's actually laws that come into place as well. So you have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, so when couples do it, it's obviously going to be dependent on the couple and their relationship, and it'll probably be influenced by what money culture they were brought up in. And by that, I mean the behaviors around money that was considered normal for their family and the way that their family interacted with money. because I know the way that Nate's family interacted with money and the way that my family interacted with money was quite different. So that definitely would contribute to someone's willingness to merge those things and have those conversations.
Yeah, it is. It's a great point that you bring up. It is important to understand someone's, history and how money showed up in their household, because that's how they would have learned everything about money. So yeah, those beliefs could be sticking around with you now and without you knowing it. And so, as an example, you might have saw your parents fight a lot about money. So maybe now you just avoid the money conversation altogether, because money equals fight. So if I just don't talk about money, we won't fight. And so, yeah, there's definitely stuff that's happened in your family environment that's going to show up now and be impacting you. I think it's important to understand, childhood and how money was spoken about, not spoken about. And so, for me, I've got this funny story that I tell that, like my mum and my dad used to say, oh, money doesn't grow on trees. What do you think we are made of money? Well, that means that money must be hard to get. And so, if money's hard to get, well, I can't have a job that I like. I can't have fun making, money. I better go do a really boring accounting degree.
Yeah, because you built a belief that money's meant to be hard.
Yes. Even though I hated the degree, I finished it. Even though I hated it, I stuck to it because, that's what you do. Money's hard to get. You have to work hard for money. And so I think it is really important to understand those, family dynamics and what happened, because they could be impacting you now and impacting your relationship. So I think, that's a very good point that you bring up about that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing that you've just touched on, because that we might have beliefs that we're not even aware of. Obviously, there's habits and behaviors, but we might not be aware of the belief that's sitting behind that behavior. Do you have any advice on how we might be able to explore what created those beliefs?
Yeah, there's a couple of really good authors in this space. One of them is a lady called Denise Duffield Thomas, who has a book called Lucky Bitch. That is an amazing one. There's another one called Jen. I'll think of the name. I'm having a mental block, but there's a couple of ones in that space that help you figure out how did I get to this place. So those books, I think that would be one to dive in. One just having it. I'm a badass at making money. That's the other one. I'm a badass at making money and Lucky Bitch are both great books that help you unpack a lot of that belief stuff and how it's showing up. So it's probably something you're not even aware of that you're doing. And so one of the exercises that I get people first to do is to pay attention to what they say to themselves throughout the day, like subconsciously. Not what they say out loud, but what they're saying subconsciously. And so, particularly around that money to start with. So we focus on money. What is it they're saying? And so because, people's emotions can trigger, a whole heap of emotional spending and, then, credit card debt and holidays, impulse purchasing and all sorts of stuff. And often that stuff has come from, some of the stuff that, might be left over from their childhood, how money was in their household. And so, but I think the first thing is to be very conscious of what story is running through your head around money, because once you know that story, then you can start to change it. So one of the exercises that we get clients to do is, first of all, be conscious. So for me, it was I have to work hard for money. So I would get a piece of paper, I would draw a line down the middle of that page, and on one side I put what my current story is, and my other side I put what I want it to be. So, I have to work hard for money, I can have fun making money. So I would do that reverse, and that's one of the exercises we get people to do. So first of all, be conscious of it, write down your old story, and then put what your new story you want it to be, and then fold that piece of paper in half and read your new story morning and night. Put it on the mirror, put it everywhere until that becomes your new story, until it cements in. So that's one of the exercises we can do. But I have to work hard for money is definitely one that I had. It could be that money, people that make money, this is a good one, people that make money must be greedy. And so I had this one, sort of funny, but my dad would always say, anytime someone had something new, like a new boat or a big four-wheel drive or something like that, he'd niggle me and say, drug money. That's how they got that money, drug money. And so if you're telling someone very young that, and he was sort of half joking.
Because that's the only way to get money.
Yeah, you have to do something illegal to make money. So I have it. But that sort of sticks around with you that bad people have money. That's what that underlying belief is, that bad people have money. And we see that in all our cartoons. We see it in The Simpsons, Mr. Burns, the people with money in cartoons that we're exposed to from a young age, they're evil. Bad people have money. And so I see this a lot with people in the natural space, healers and, all those creative people, they don't want to be associated with bad. And so, they don't charge for their price. They don't make enough money. They don't charge for their prices. And then, they don't end up helping anyone in business because they're not profitable. And so often their money story impacts their business and stuff as well from their childhood, from their cartoons, not just from the parents, but from what they're exposed to in the media. And so, it has such a huge impact. And so, that one little exercise we do can really help to, first of all, you might even be aware that you're saying it. I don't know, I wasn't aware that money must be bad. I just started to think about it more and realized, well, that's something my dad used to say to me all the time. And that hard was another one. So, I think if you start to unpack this, you'll start to see how it's showing up in your life. And then you can definitely do something about it. That exercise is one, but also there's lots of other great authors that dive into this space as well.
Yeah, really cool. So money can be a real frustration for some couples and a real pain point. So what can couples do to help remove some of that friction and to really set themselves up for success in actually making money or saving money?
Yeah. So I think one of the things is try not to just, you may not be able to do it yourself, and be okay with not doing it yourself. So we know that the people in the world, the athletes that get the best results are the ones that work with coaches. So we know that, people like, Olympic athletes especially will have several coaches. And it's okay for them to get help. But in money, we somehow think that we can do it ourselves. And particularly if you've got another partner involved, then it can be something that you just get stuck with. You think, I should be able to do this, and you just get stuck with it. And because you're time poor, you're busy, it's an uncomfortable conversation to bring up. And so, it can be. And so, often, the fastest way to get results is to work with a coach. A coach is going to be, that's going to be the right fit for you. So I might not be the right fit for everyone, but for the coach that's the right fit with you, I've always worked with coaches. Since I was, 20, I've worked with different coaches in business. And so for me, I could get the results slower I could get the results by myself, but it's slower. So working with a coach helps you, have those uncomfortable conversations early. It helps you with your accountability. It helps you, get those results much quicker working with a coach.
Yeah, that's so true. Kind of like anything in your life, if you were struggling to train and get to peak performance, it would be obvious to go and get a personal trainer to help you figure it out. But I guess that's not the default when it comes to money. Adele, we know that you've got some pretty amazing tools and resources and apps and a community of people who are being really conscious about their money and what they're trying to do in life. But money really just gives us options. It gives us choices. To set up some really great financial plans or intents, you need to make some choices. Nathan and I have found that it's so easy to save for travel and adventures because it's something we really love, whereas we find it a lot harder to put money away for something that we don't know what we're going to spend it on. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you shift that or how we could become more aware of our future?
Yeah, and so it is really hard to get that balance right between current you and future you. So to, think about your future self. So, but one of the exercises we do is actually to, go into the future. What does a great life look like for you? What are you doing? How are you spending your days? One of the other exercises I've done is, you're at your eulogy. What do you want people to say about you? And so then we work backwards and say, well, if that's what you need, what do we need to do to get you there? Okay, what do we need to do? Where do you need to be in 10 years? Where do you need to be in 12 months to make sure we're on track to that? And so maybe it's that you want to travel the world and you want to do that stuff. Well, you're going to have money to be able to do that. And so, I think that's, it's important to think about what makes a great life for you, because it is going to be money, but it may not be money. And so I think this is one of the things we beat ourselves up on. I see clients do this all the time. I have to get a house. My parents told me I have to get a house. And then they feel miserable saving for the house because they actually don't want a house. That's something their parents valued security. They actually don't value security. And so, they really struggle with that. So, I think first of all, tapping into what your values are, what's important. But I think the other thing is breaking a goal down. And so first of all, making sure the goal is important to you and it aligns with your values, because if you're going to save for something that's not important to you, you're going to be absolutely miserable and you're not going to stick to it. It's going to be a bit like a diet. You might stick to it for a little bit, but long term you won't stick to it and you'll be really resentful and not like it. So I think that is one thing, is to make sure your goals align with your values. Don't try to compare yourself to your parents and what they did. What's important to you guys? What's going to bring you happiness? And then I think the other thing is, if you are going to have a long-term goal, say to pay off credit card debt or whatever it is, or home loan or whatever, that's going to a long time away, then try and chunk it down to little goals, because you want to be able to celebrate those wins and, feel like you're achieving something, tick it off. And when you've got something like like people would say to me, it's so easy to save for our first house. It was, well, not easy, but easy to save for our first house. But now we're in here, we don't seem to be able to save anything. And that's because they've got this, or the wedding was so easy to save for a wedding, but that's because they've had a goal, but it's not like that far away. It's a year or two away they've been able to do it. And when they get in there and their mortgage is 20, 30 years, it just feels like, oh, well, it's too long, I'm never going to be able to do it. So I think to break it down to smaller goals really helps, and to celebrate those wins. So one of the things that I encourage clients to do is one of the things to do with your partner, or if you don't have a partner by yourself, is a money date. So, understand, that money is like any relationship. You need to pay attention to it. Treat money like your best friend. If your best friend, you wouldn't ignore your best friend, you wouldn't not, talk to your best friend or ignore it, and do the same with your money. So one of the things we do is have a money date. Hopefully weekly, but if not weekly, monthly, where you and your partner are talking about money, and you're talking about it all the time, and you are celebrating those wins. You are saying, oh, we've got the home loan now down to under that 300K mark. Let's celebrate. And how are we going to celebrate? And so I think celebrating those wins, breaking it down and then celebrating, I think is really important as well. Making sure you're working towards a goal that's important to you and aligned with your values. But also, one of the exercises we do is think about your future self. Try to position, so when I'm going to be 50, my kids will be this age and we'll be doing this, and try and bring yourself into that future, and what makes a great life for you and what you'll be doing, and then think about that while you work backwards.
So if you could encourage our listeners to do one thing today to improve their financial future, what would it be?
One thing. I would say, first of all, have I hate the word budget, but a spending plan. So figure out, use the last few months worth of data, but look at, what incomes come in, what expenses have gone out, and is this what we are we happy with this? And so, I think that's one thing, is having a spending plan, because it can actually make you feel more in control. So one of the things, I'm a big believer in doing that, because good businesses have a profit and loss, and they look at that regularly, because that profit and loss, not just for budgeting, not just to make sure they're on track to a budget, but because they can use that information to make informed decisions. Can we afford to put a new team member on, or pay this extra rent or whatever? That's why a business uses it, so they can make decisions with confidence. So a household is just like a business. And so understanding and knowing their budget and how they're tracking, but also having that data, so when they go buy their first house or they have a baby or whatever it is, they've got that confidence. So to be able to make those decisions with real data, real numbers. Or, at the moment we're going through, COVID. I've got a few clients that have been impacted. I know that if they're going to get the government benefit, I know exactly what that's done to their household, because we've been tracking all their income expenses. So even though it's a bit boring and not that exciting, having that foundation, that spending plan, is so important, because I know people want to go and invest, and that's the exciting bit, and they want to know what share to buy and all that. But it's like having a foundation of a house. If you don't have the foundation of the house right, well, the whole thing's going to fall over. And so if you don't have your foundation right for your wealth, which is that spending plan, making sure you spend less, you earn more than you spend. If you don't have that foundation right, well, it doesn't matter how great the shares are that you buy, the whole thing's going to crumble. And so, get that foundation right first, even though it's not super sexy, it's really important for that long-term wealth building.
Thank you so much, Adele. You've given me lots to think about. I think maybe Nathan and I need to be celebrating more of our milestones. Then it might make it easier to save for the bigger things. Hey, so one of the things that we do at Fuel Collective is live and breathe our values. We talked a little bit about values and how they show up in relationships with money today, and we've got a couple that I want to share with you. They're to love life, which is really about living very intentionally the life that you want to live, not what others think you should be doing. The second is to obviously date forever and to continue dating yourself and your partner. Then the third is to be the change. And that's really about being accountable for the impacts that you can make in your own life, but also the impacts you can create in the world. So to say thank you for joining us on the show today, we have given 9 days of business training to women in Malawi to help them establish their business, get some more financial literacy skills so that they can support their families and in turn their communities. So thank you so much for making that possible.
I love and I love those values. It's a pleasure being able to help support your audience.
No, thank you. So if people have loved what you've been talking about today, how should they connect with you?
So I think the best way is to go to adelemartin.com. You'll see a whole heap of information and free resources there. We've got the Saving Squad podcast, which is available in all the app stores. We've also got the Saving Squad Facebook community, which supports the podcast as well. And so in there, you'll see a whole heap of free resources. So in the unit section, we've got a 5-day money challenge. We've got how to negotiate a bill, which is another good one I encourage people to do is how do you negotiate a bill? What do you say? And so we've got all the steps in there. So there's lots of great resources, free stuff inside the Saving Squad community Facebook group. But yeah, if you go to adelemartin.com, that will give you all the information to be able to help support your financial future.
You are awesome. Thank you so much, Adele.
You're most welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.